Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and this time, finally get to welcome our good friend Alex Belew on the show. Alex, I guess, cooks food pretty well. He's also season 21, the winner of Hell's Kitchen. He's all over social media doing his stuff, his cooking, and one of the second chef I've had on the podcast. It's a topic of mine. I'm not a good cook, but I love cooking. And I think we kind of start there. It was like, when you kind of jump into like your cooking, was there an experience you had growing up with your parents, siblings? Like, how did you actually grow your love for what you do?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was not a good cook. I hope she's not watching this.
It's not live, so we're good.
Okay, good. No, I mean, I grew up very poor, and so my grandparents owned a general store in the country. You know, very small community. My grandmother was the quintessential Southern cook. You know, she was killing chickens in the backyard that we would then eat for dinner. And I was just always more single child or single parent only child raised by a mom. So, you know, we had Martha Stewart magazines around the house. There was no father influence of sports and this and that. So it was always more food and home and gardening and all that kind of stuff. And I just always found myself in the kitchen with my grandmother versus being, you know, in the living room with my pants open watching the big game. Like, it was just more, I was more interested in how she made boiled custard and buttermilk pancakes and fried okra and the biscuits. And I don't know, there was just something magical about taking these raw ingredients and turning them into something that was so delicious. And,
right.
And also them owning the general store, man, they were just so kind to everyone in their community. When they both passed away and we were cleaning out their store, we found this box that was, you know, this big, had probably 6 drawers in it. Each drawer was about this long, and each drawer was filled with a piece of paper that was an IOU from a customer that needed gas or needed a sandwich or needed a PVC pipe fitting or something. And they were always like, "Earl, I don't have it on me, but I'll get it to you soon." And he'd write it down. There's probably $1 million of IOU from 1954 to, you know, but the love of hospitality and taking care of people and food kind of all started there. And then my first job, like, I worked at a place called Old Time Pottery when I was 15 or 16. And they put me in the garden center during the winter, and then they had a little cafe inside the store, you know, hot dogs, frozen burgers, no bake Jello cheesecakes. And that was kind of my deal. And then I got a job in a restaurant when I was 17. And it was just between music and food. That was kind of, I worked in a restaurant, and then I played in a band, and I barely went to college. And that was pretty much how it all started.
You when you mentioned like growing up, I remember as a kid, PBS for me was either Bob Ross or Julia Childs.
Yep.
And as I got older, Iron Chef, the original, Mark DeCosta speaking Japanese and doing all this crazy shit. And then, but I don't remember when the kick went into overdrive where cooking became the Food Network. It became this whole like huge, like, it kind of blew up. It's like, do you remember that phase when you were kind of, I mean, obviously you and I were on the same age,
Yeah.
but like, at what point did you realize that something with food could grow like a global brand?
I mean, the Food Network really started blowing up. Emerald Live, like, that was a primetime, nighttime cooking show, which I don't think there's been one since that. But, you know, Michael Simon, Bobby Flay, all those guys kind of were in the late 90s, and that's when it really started to blow up. And by the early 2000s, I mean, the idea of being a chef started to get popular because nobody knew. I mean, back before really in the 90s and 80s, being a chef wasn't thought of as being cool at all. You're in the back of the house hanging out baked potatoes with some curly kale on the side. And you're like, "I made you dinner." And it was never looked at as being cool. But I remember when I was around 14, I watched this show called The Naked Chef. It was a Saturday, and I made an apple pie from scratch. No recipe, just kind of threw it together. And I went outside and was playing or whatever. And I came back in and my mom had eaten the whole pie. And she was like, "Don't ever do that again." and it was delicious. And I was like, okay. And I didn't really put it to, this is pre-internet days. So I didn't really put it together that I could be a cook. And I didn't really realize until I was probably 22 working at a restaurant in downtown Nashville that I was like, I think I might want to go to culinary school and kind of, because I had just been a server and a bartender for 4 or 5 years, but the restaurant was great. The clientele was wealthy. So they started hiring me as a bartender to do private events in their home. And I was really just ripping off the restaurant that I worked at doing their dishes. And, one thing led to another. I decided to go to culinary school, and it kind of just all started to get into place.
Is there a lack of people being pushed into the trade school, you think, these days? Whether it's plumbing, electricity, whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the crazy thing about it is that those trade jobs pay incredibly well. I mean, I know what I pay to have an electrician come to my house.
Oh.
And it's not nothing. It's, I'm sorry, you're $200 an hour. What was that? It's like, it's
Right.
crazy. There's an old, I don't know if it's an analogy of metal. It's a little story about this guy. This factory breaks down. It's the one machine that makes all the shoes in the factory, and they don't know what's going on. They can't crank out their shoes. So they call the one guy that knows how to fix it. He shows up. They're like, hey, this is the problem. He goes over there, he listens to it, takes out his hammer, taps on the machine, the whole machine fires up. And the guy was like, oh my God, thank you. You saved our business. Send me an invoice. We'll pay you. So he sends him an invoice for $25,000. And the guy's like, what the hell is this? Like, it took you 5 seconds to fix it. Send me an itemized invoice of all this breakdown. And the guy said, $5, hammer, $24,995. No one hit the hammer. And that's trade schools could be, I mean, we need these people so the shit doesn't come up out of the toilet. So our lights work. Like, they're in high demand, but this push to go to universities where you're going to be massively in debt, more than likely indoctrinated in some sort of capacity, and probably party more than you're going to study. I told my boys, I don't care what you want to do. I don't care if you want to make shoelaces for the rest of your life. Just love it, be damn good at it, and make the best shoelaces you can. Other than that, everything will fall into place.
Right. Yeah, see, we were just talking the other day, my family and I, about dentistry and how much it costs, because I only know maybe one dentist in my extended family through a cousin, where I'm like, if there's more dentists, it'd be a lot much cheaper. To kind of to your point, where it's like we don't value those type of trade schools and people that actually do what they do. And you bitch about, oh, it costs so much. Well, it's like, well, he's the only good person that does what you need. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, I hate the dentist. I think my whole family hates the dentist, and it's never cheap. It's like, I'm sorry.
It's weird. Everything costs something.
Water, and it's $245.
Right. Like they pay you, you have to pay to get a piece of candy as a kid to leave. Like, I'm just like,
you want a balloon?
Right.
That's $700, Dad. Like, damn.
Right. I've actually I went to a dentist a year and a half ago just because it felt weird, but I've never had a cavity in my entire life. And wow. I don't do the best care, I don't think, for my teeth, but it's a weird thing. I don't know if I'm just afraid of them or.
It's definitely they're scraping back there. It's like that noise that gets in your ear. It's in the back of your head, and it's just like my toes are curling. It's not a great feeling at all. And every time they're like, how often do you floss? I'm like, twice a year, and you do it both times.
Right. I can't tell the last time I flossed. I do mouthwash every night just to go to bed happy, but it's the
around.
Yeah, sloshing around. What's the biggest technological advance you've seen through cooking in the last couple of years that has actually benefited you? And then maybe on the other side of that, something that's kind of got in the way of doing it the old school way.
I would say, the rise of molecular gastronomy is not super big anymore. It went through a huge phase where everybody was wanting to turn everything into a sphere, a gel, a mold,
a gas,
foam of something. Yeah, something. I'm like, I made you New York strip foam. I'm like, that sounds freaking terrible. I would say sous vide is probably one of the biggest things that we've seen. It's a pro and a con. I mean, it's legitimately idiot proof. I mean, there's no overcooking really possible. But at the same time, you're taking away the technical skill of knowing how to cook something on fire, on a stove, on a grill. If the water bath is doing it all for you, you're losing that connection with the food. You're losing that's mid rare. You're losing I don't know, something about it. You're removing the beauty from it, but
Right.
the science behind what you can create with sous vide is crazy. I mean, it's wild. You can take super cheap cuts of meat and make them eat like a filet or a New York strip, but it's $1.99 a pound versus $18.99 a pound. So there are some beautiful things that you can do with it, but in some ways, if the younger generation just wants to skip straight to that, then they're missing the foundation, the building blocks of what creates a good chef.
Right.
You can't just go turn snails into a foam. You have to learn how to dice an onion, you got to know the basics. And I think so many people just gloss over the basics. They skip safety and sanitation and fundamentals and culinary 101 and how to hold a knife properly. And then they just go straight to making Instagram videos. They're like, I'm a chef. And they're holding their knife like this, and it drives me crazy.
Well, the whole social media thing is weird because anyone can become an influencer. And if you have enough I'm not gonna say idiots, but maybe I will. People that buy into this idea that you're just a facade. That's why when I watch your stuff, and there's a couple other chefs too, like Bobby Flay, Michael Simon, people like that I follow, where I'm just like, it's authentic. And that you can tell like their fans are super supportive and authentic people as well, as opposed to some of these people that, because I watch those when they do like those fake ads for like the Big Mac and like stuff, how they make those look really appealing. That's what I feel like with some of these influencers when it comes to the food stuff, where there's no heart and soul in what they're doing. It's just to get likes or sponsors or people to watch their reel because they can make their piece of bacon look really shiny and crunchy.
Yeah, they know how to edit, they know how to film, they've got a good camera, it looks sharp and crisp, and then they're probably a semi-attractive person as well.
Yeah, there's no ugly people cooking stuff.
Right. But then also most of them are frauds. It's like, I know several of them that tried a different approach to their Instagram account. One was a fitness influencer, didn't go well. So then he just starts cooking with just an apron on. And it's like, oh, he's a chef. I'm like, bro, that dude's not a chef. He's never even stepped foot in the back of the house of a restaurant. He's just got good looking shoulders, and he made a fucking sandwich. Okay.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Now get on the saute station when you got 350 covers and show me how you do.
Yeah. Super fascinating. So for you, is it more difficult to cook? Like, what's more stressful? Is it stressful to cook an A5 piece of Wagyu perfectly, or cooking a terrible cut of meat like really well? Like, is there like what's your mental approach to that? Is it what's more stressful? Like, how do you approach what's easier to mess up?
I mean, the more expensive and better the ingredient, sometimes the easier it is to work with, because you don't need to manipulate it to be great. It's already great.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Like, you get an A5 piece of steak, you cook that thing any more than rare, and you've murdered it. So anybody can undercook a steak, right? But nailing a perfect temperature is hard. Like, you get a beautiful piece of halibut, it's $49 a pound. You lightly poach it in some olive oil for 8 minutes, you sear it, and then you just slow roast in the oven. That's easy. But it still takes precision, obviously, but to take a chicken thigh, and make it something sexy, it takes a little bit of work, because it's a cheap ingredient. People just think of it as a chicken thigh, but like,
so good.
It's the best.
Breast.
I only eat chicken breast because I don't want to be fat. That's really it. Like, it's just but the chicken thigh, you can overcook it and it's still delicious. It's great.
I think recently you cooked like was it spatchcock?
Yeah.
I always find like some of those terms, I mean, the child in me always laughs, but it's like, who came up with that phrases like that? Like, why would you call it that? Like, why not just call it, I don't know. Like, it just seems like
chicken.
very, yeah.
here we got some backless chickens. I don't know. Maybe it's the dude that started that technique. That maybe that was his last name. I've never done any research into that. That's an interesting question. But the cool thing, I mean, spatchcocking saves you so much time. It's
Right.
you're removing 30% of the cooking time. When you take the back out of a turkey or a chicken, your cooking time drastically reduces.
But I've watched you do that numerous times, and every time I want to think I could do it, I can't figure it out. And like it goes to the whole thing where there's probably something I could do really well, where if you saw it the first time, you're like, what the hell is going on? And that's why it's like,
Yeah, like keeping people safe at concerts.
yeah, yeah, possibly. So it's like I'm just trying to like figure out like how like to get at the level you're at. I mean, it's a lot of like hard work, but there's also a lot of bad days too,
Oh,
where even you struggle doing what you're really good at. Like, what's your like? How do you deal with those type of days?
I don't have a whole lot of quit in me, which my wife would tell you is a downside sometimes because, like, we have an argument and I'm like, no, we're not done. We're going to keep talking.
So is that a stubborn part of you, or is that ego part of you?
Probably both. I've lost a lot of the ego. Like in the last 5 years, I honestly feel dumber than I was in 2017 somehow. I don't know
Well,
how.
yeah, the pandemic helps.
Well, sure. But I'm much more grateful and humble and thankful now than, and I think I realize how truly like blessed I am to have the life that I have, the family that I have, the friends that I have, but not every day is a great day. When I owned my restaurant, man, that was truly, it was hard, like
Yeah,
working 90 hours a week, not seeing my children. I was generally the only one. I would get there around 6 a.m. Dinner service didn't start till 5, but none of my other cooks came in until 2 or 3. And so all that prep stupidly was on me. And I had a hard time letting go and letting other people come up.
yeah.
And I felt the need to have it perfect every time, and that the only way it was going to be perfect was if I did it. And I've truly learned that that's terrible leadership. It's not, I wasn't giving other people the chance to get better. I just, I held them at the level they were at. And then I kind of micromanaged them sometimes. And, you know, it was truly tough. There were lots of really hard days.
Well, it's super tiring too, just mentally and physically on yourself. But it's also it's like you care so much. It's like how often where I've been in a room with people that they're in my background or field, and you get to know them. You start maybe one or two of those people have 100. They could be at my level. They could, or at least think the way I do in terms of hey, we got to keep pushing ourselves higher and higher to get to where we want to go. It's like some of these people just like oh, they're just there. It's like, how do you, the idea of self-motivating yourself versus motivating others to be at your level, it's
Yeah.
super tiring. And sometimes, like you said, it's easier for me just to do all the work myself and burn myself out than to trust someone who even has maybe has the gumption and pride to actually do what I do. I'd rather be the one that suffers.
I'm the same way. It's like I don't want to ask you to do that. If I feel like it's going to put you out, I'll take on the burden.
Right.
But it's so much to carry, and it's exhausting. And at the same time, you're looking at them, and you're like, I really want to give this to you, but I'm just going to hang on to it, and I'm not going to talk about it. And I'm just going to bear with it. But at night when I come home, I'm going to cry, and I'm going to sit on the back porch, and I'm going to be like, fuck, that was hard. Like it was just so much to handle. And I've learned that you can let it go a little bit, but at the same time, like I think a lot of people are okay just being okay. Like they're just complacent.
How did you separate the shift at work versus before you step back in your home to your family? Like, was there anything you had to do where you're kind of like didn't want to bring that tension and stuff at work to home? Like, how do you kind of like separate those two things?
So my restaurant was zero 0.5 miles from my,
Off
so
baseball.
I can run there in 6 minutes, basically, if I run slow. And usually when I would come home, Sarah knew that I didn't, nobody could talk to me for like 30 minutes.
Interesting.
It was
Yeah.
just so much. And I'm not like that now at all. But during those days, it was very much like you need to give me some space so I can decompress. Because it was at the time, I had a 3 and a 1-year-old. So they were just bananas. And now they're still bananas, but they're just bigger bananas. But it was very much like there was so much to deal with. I tried to touch every table. I was making sure every plate, like I plated every dish. I worked the expo station. The bartender got in the weeds. I was behind the bar making drinks, touching all the tables, making sure all the staff was good. And then by the time it was time to get home, I was just like so spent. It was a 15, 16-hour day, standing up, no breaks. And I'm like, I just need you to be quiet for a minute.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how it was back then. It wasn't great.
Yeah, it's like your kids want or your wife wants a sandwich or a salad, and you just made 100 of them.
Oh, boy. I've been cooking all day, fool.
That's wild.
Hi, Daddy. Me. She's like, he loves you. He does. Daddy loves you. It's just.
Yeah. Did you find under the banner of like the Hell's Kitchen stuff, it kind of suppressed who you wanted to be as a chef? Like, I mean, I don't know if you can get specific. It's like the whole Hell's Kitchen and like the Gordon Ramsay stuff, but in terms of like under his banner, you have to act a certain way, obviously, which makes sense. But like, did it ever get to the point where it kind of suppressed too much of you, where you couldn't be the version you wanted to be?
I think just acclimating to society sometimes does that to me. I've very much got Michael Jordan's perspective of I want Democrats and Republicans to buy my shoes. So, I have opinions. We all have opinions.
Right.
I used to be more opinionated, and then I realized it wasn't doing much good. And but I don't know. I mean, I think I pretty much represent who I am to the most part within about an 85 percentile. There's way more sarcasm and humor that I don't let out because I don't, I'm so you don't want to offend anybody. And it's just so easy to offend people now. But I think for the most part, I am true to who I am. But I mean, it was cool being a representative of that brand and that person.
Yeah.
But it was also not what everybody thought it was.
Yeah, what's funny, like the whole, and I've had a bunch of people, whether it's survival shows and stuff, that they have to deal with like the networks and producers and stuff, and they very much like you're saying, very wig wig type stuff. But like I went back and actually did rewatch when you won on season 21 of Hell's Kitchen, and the whole door thing. One, I was like, if this guy doesn't win, I hope he kicks his door and slays everyone downstairs and throws Gordon over the railing. But like the stuff like that, like. I find the TV tries too hard to create these human moments, but then when I watch your reaction, it seems so genuine. Where I've seen other winners, it came off as very like too polished and not real, if that makes sense. Where
Yeah.
you seem like you look like you were just tired and emotionally just beat up, and then here you are, you won it. It seemed very genuine.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the most grueling 20 days of my life. I mean, it was crazy emotionally, mentally, physically. I mean, you're sharing this dorm room with 17 strangers. You don't get to talk to your family for 5 weeks. I missed both my kids' birthdays. You don't have a phone. You have no clue what's going on. You are working 21 hours a day with very little breaks. You're eating terrible food. You're eating Uncrustables and Dino Nuggets. You're drinking just Red Bull and Gatorade, and you're sharing a toilet. And it's, everybody's scheduling their poop times. They're like, Billy's got 7:30. Okay. So, and then that person gets up, the seat's still warm. You're like, oh, this is so great. But it was a crazy ride. And my life has been filled with so many almost and maybes that, first of all, I couldn't even believe I got on the show, because that's hard enough. 20,000 people apply.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. And then to get to that point, to be behind that door was surreal. And for it to open was like, I've never won anything. And to have that moment to where, coming out of COVID, shutting down the restaurant, band almost got signed in 2010, and then that didn't happen. And there's just been so many, you're this close. And it was a genuine out of body experience. I mean, I didn't see it coming at all, but it's exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. And I'm still incredibly thankful for the whole thing. It's crazy.
If you were on death row and had to cook your last meal, what would it
Double
be?
smash burger.
That's awesome.
I don't have to think about that. Double smash burger, vanilla ice cream, peanut M&Ms, and I'm good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Kill me now.
What I kind of want to jump into like your songwriting. What's tougher for you, to write a original song or to write a recipe that a billion people could understand?
Oh, definitely writing an original song. I mean, I feel like every recipe has already kind of been done. You're really just taking influence from this recipe and then putting yourself into it. Recipes really can't be copywritten. So like you add lemon juice and now it's your recipe.
Right.
So, I mean, coming up with recipes is pretty easy. I mean, I used to change my restaurant menu on the weekly basis. I mean, it was just always adapting and changing it with, the seasonality and what the producers have and what the farmers have. But writing a song I mean, I've written hundreds of songs and none of them are good. It's like writing a song that tells the story without being too metaphorical and yet still makes sense to people that live their lives and it hits them in different ways. I don't know. That's the one beautiful thing about music is I can listen to a song that I heard 20 years ago, and 20 years ago it meant one thing and now it means another.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about music is it meets you where you are and you hear what you need to hear from it. And I don't know, music was always the first love. It was just, I had to make a decision one day, which one am I going to focus on to make money? And one of my things paid and one of them didn't.
Right. But you are super talented when it comes to the singer-songwriter stuff. And it's like, how do you, I know you've had you had this podcast back in the day, this little show you're doing with like the singer-songwriter and the cooking stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
it seemed very organic and true to who you are. And it's like, how do you what are your thoughts on like maybe doubling down on that singer-songwriter stuff and like doing kind of your thing? Because I think, especially now with social media, the good aspect of it, I found a lot of super talented people that were farmers, that were oil workers, that were just stay-at-home dads or moms that have an incredible knack for writing a great song or they can sing and they put themselves out there. And now they're getting record deals and all this stuff. It's like, that's a good thing with social media. As long as you put yourself out there, it's authentic. I think people will gravitate towards that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's good and you put it out there and it resonates with people, people are going to attach themselves to it. You can't help it, but that, and I put out 2 songs just because I needed to. I missed it. I missed making music. That feeling that you get, you can't really get it from anything else. It's the best way I can describe it is, being on stage with your band and everything is firing correctly.
Yeah.
You're not worried about the next note, the next chord, the next lyric. Everybody's in the pocket. And when you get done with that show, that's that feeling of that was fucking great.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everybody was clicking. That same feeling is what I would get on a Friday night at a restaurant during dinner service when all the right players are behind their stations and the food's going out, the guests are happy, the staff is happy. And at the end of the night, you've done 250 covers and you're like, yo, that was a good dinner service.
Yeah.
Those 2 things are it's the same feeling in a way, but for me, there's always just been something about performing. I mean, I've been chasing that since I was 7 years old in choir, every high school play, sang at Carnegie Hall, sang at Ely Cathedral in London, was singing through pantyhose pop filters in bathrooms in my college apartment, doing hooks on hip hop beats just so I'm like doing everything. I'm in a blues jam band, but I'm also recording hip hop beats. And then I'm doing demos for people who are doing jingles in Nashville, like call Roto Rooter, whatever I can do to get out there. And then I was in a band and we were doing really well. And then the drummer and his wife got pregnant. They needed to find a job. And then the whole thing just kind of
Right.
developed. And, you know, you got to kind of pick your lane and stay in it. There's not a lot of part-time chefs out there.
What's on your playlist now for when you're cooking dinner? Say you have like 3 hour prep for a big family dinner. Like, what's on your playlist?
It's crazy that I do listen to a ton of music, but I'm more so listen to podcasts when I'm prepping, because if I'm listening to music, I will flat out just start singing, and it's like it's impossible to not have a concert in my kitchen. So I listen to podcasts and try to kind of zone into what I'm doing. It's almost background noise at a certain point. If I've got, you know, Michael Bublé playing, I'm going to be like, fly me to the moon. There's an onion that I need to cut.
Yeah.
It's just not going to go well.
I'm the exact, so when I'm writing and doing my other stuff, I have to listen to music because it doesn't feel like a conversation I'm having. It's just a song I've heard a million times. But if I put a podcast on, I feel like that person's talking to me and I want to start asking questions. It's such a weird, it's a distraction free podcast. Anything I do, if I'm cutting grass, it's a distraction. Music is my only way to like, I could type a whatever to Cannibal Corpse playing and not even be bothered in the least bit. But the minute I start hearing about solar flares and the world ending June 6th, I'm like,
next thing you know, you're like, what is a solar flare?
Yeah, yeah. Why is my cell phone not working? It's so it's like, did you ever, now the other thing you do too with the whole fitness thing, how, like, it's just, you're able to do all this type of stuff, but like, is there a correlation between all three, or maybe even more so the fitness cooking? Because if I ate my own food the way you cook, I feel like I would just feel like a complete slob. Like I'd just be like, give me more, give me more. It's like, how do you like, and that very rarely do you see chefs that are like physically fit, they can do a Spartan race and cook in the kitchen. One of them kind of leads to the other. So it's like, how do you like micromanage that aspect of like dedicating gym time to the kitchen time?
I mean, I think honestly, being physically fit helps in the kitchen because it's a very grueling manual job. I mean, you're standing up, you're bending over, you're lifting things that are constantly over 50 pounds. You know, you're always trying to balance things. If I'm fat and slobbish and overweight and out of shape, I'm gonna be exhausted all day long. And you know, prep hours are long. You're constantly loading and unloading. You need to be in shape. Honestly, for me, it's probably 90% mental. I need to get in there and battle it out for an hour and a half, just so I'm mentally equipped to handle the day. My fuse is much, much shorter if I don't work out. And if I skip 2 or 3 days, bro, I'm like Michael Douglas and falling down in my car. I'm wanting to rip the steering wheel off and fucking beat people to death with it. Like, what is your problem? It's just not good. But you know, my routine, I wake up, I take my boys to school, I go to the gym, and then I'm ready for my day. But even when I'm traveling, I mean, you just have to, the motivation is rarely there. It's rarely motivation. It's always just discipline. There's just a little voice that just says, get up, fat ass. And it's like that kind of gets me going. And I'll lay there and I'll scroll, or I'll be on Netflix and I'll be like, man, I traveled for 10 hours yesterday. I've got to work tonight. I'm exhausted. Yeah. But then there's just this little part of me that's like, go. Then I have to go.
It's tough. I'm always trying to chase that go voice, because I was talking to a friend yesterday actually about this. And like when I'm traveling, like whether I'm flying or whatever it is, car rides, I don't eat junk food at home. I don't eat chips. I don't snack. I try to do the intermittent fasting thing, where it's like one meal for 3 or 4 hours a day, just kind of whatever. Live chicken thighs, vegetables, red meat, whatever. But when I'm traveling, I'll eat Slim Jims, peanut butter M&Ms. I'll drink like the most garbage like energy drinks. I couldn't even know what these brands are. But it's like mentally it feels all right.
You're like a kid on a road trip.
Right. But I'm almost 40. Why am I eating Slim Jims like it's the first time? And so, but when I get home, I feel like garbage. It takes me a couple of days to kind of reset into where I have to like mentally, physically like get my head straight, where it's like, hey, now I got to get back to what I was doing. It's tough to kind of do this on the road.
I think that probably comes from, I think that comes from like childhood, like the idea of going to a gas station and
Yeah,
loading up
just
on a can of Pringles and a drink and a Snickers bar, and you're like, all right, we're going on a road trip. We're going to eat like shit.
yeah.
And when you're a kid, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. When you're 40,
Right. Well, when you
it's just,
travel, when you toured Europe, like the gas station, like it's homemade pastries. It's
oof.
everything's super organic. There's no chemicals. It's like three ingredients. The shaved meats are off like a reindeer leg, where it's like this is legit prosciutto. So it's like culturally, other places outside of America, it's very conducive to like that. Stock up, grab fresh, fresh coffee, fresh goods. In America, it's just. I wish there was like a chain of gas stations that actually promoted like a guy like sashimi broccolis or like something where it's like let's just grab this instead of a bag of Funyuns or handicap cheese fries that are just going to kill you.
But do you think our system in America is like crazy broken,
It's
right?
corrupt. It's
The food,
terrible.
the food labeling is a farce. Saying something is trans fat free or fat free, but it's got 80 grams of sugar. Well, technically it's fat free right now, but when you eat it, it's all going to turn to fat.
Right.
And I don't know why we've bastardized our food system so bad in America. I mean, so many things that we have here are outlawed in other countries. I
Yeah.
mean, if Europe can figure out a way to dye their Skittles and M&Ms with beet juice or natural flavors
Yeah.
and colors, why can't we? Why are we still using red 40 and yellow number 5 and all these things that are proven scientifically to cause diseases and illnesses? I mean, the majority of the diseases and illnesses in America come from the gut.
Yeah.
What cancer spikes when fast food takes off? Heart disease comes from eating. Diabetes comes a lot of times comes from eating. Like gout, like all these things are dietary gut biome issues. But it's most people are just okay grabbing some Lucky Charms for breakfast. Or I mean, that's the one thing about being home. When I'm home, my boys, they eat 2 scrambled eggs and strawberries and a banana and orange juice for breakfast every morning. And it's like, I don't know what you're doing the rest of the day, but I know you're starting with good protein,
Right.
good fruit, and and then we are in charge of dinner as well. But just new, I mean, was it like 70% of the people in America are overweight / obese? We got a cultural problem. It's not every other country on the planet. It's us.
Yeah. God, I remember those grade school back in the day where it's like you get the tray, the piece of like pizza, square pizza, the cup of fruit, the chocolate milk. Like I
Junk
don't know.
juice.
It's because I growing up, like when I saw the food pyramid for the first time in kindergarten, I'd be like, oh, okay, sure. I get all down. But as you get older, it's almost like it's got to be flipped on its head because the
It's
truth,
upside
they're
down.
lying to us this whole time.
It's
Maybe,
upside down.
right. It's weird.
We need proteins, we need fats, we need some fruits and vegetables, and the last thing we need is carbs. Like we don't you don't have to have carbs that are coming from pasta and bread and potatoes. You get carbs from fruits and vegetables, but protein is the building block of our bodies. We need it for muscle synthesis. We need it for rebuilding our cellular structure. You need it for sleep. You need it to maintain a healthy body. You need it for muscle. You need it for bone density. You need it for neurological things. Like protein is the key. You should be eating 10 grams of protein for every 100 calories, but most people could not tell you that information. They don't know that. Most people are fine eating something with 850 calories that's frozen and 20 grams of protein. I'm like, that's terrible for you. Terrible.
Do you do you take any supplements or like powders and stuff when you work out, or is everything, or like how does that? Because that whole process, and I've had a bunch of bodybuilders and stuff on the podcast talk about that, where it's tough to find something that's truly organic, where you
Yeah.
can understand all the ingredients that isn't being sold to you because it looks sexy in some magazine ad. Like, so
Yeah.
how do you kind of balance taking the powders and supplements like that versus like actually eating the foods that could possibly give you the same outcome?
I mean, the supplements that I take, so I take athletic greens in the morning with my water. I put vitamin D, vitamin K, and then collagen in there. I've got terrible knees. So that's kind of my morning cocktail before I have coffee. And then before I go to the gym, about 30 minutes before, I'll take creatine. which creatine is like the #1 most studied supplement in the world. It's been shown to reduce neurological disorders like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. It fills your muscles with water, so you can lift more, you recover better. It's just overall better for you. And then other than that, I take magnesium, fish oil, milk thistle, and that's about.
There was I think, I don't know if Brett or Zach have told the story from Shinedown, but me and Zach, Barry and Eric, well, Brett is very much like if I go, hey man, I got a headache, he's got fish eyeball powder. He's like a shaman when it comes to this stuff. So we're one night, and you've been on a tour bus where like the garbage trash chute is under the thing, and it goes to like a bottom compartment underneath where our bags are. Well, one day we're just laughing about someone had an allergy thing, and we started making fun of Brett because we were like, Zach would start doing these impersonations. We're like, oh, you need milk thistle? Hold on a second. It's like Brett jumping down the trash chute to go into his bag to grab all these powders and stuff. It's like, but what's interesting with that whole thing, it's like how in tune to you is once you put the research into that. Leave my mom now and my aunt. They get the turmeric and like all these organic things you can do, like the ginseng and actually garlic. Yeah. It makes sense why the government or agencies like that would want to control people for having that type of access to something you and I we could literally grow these powders in our backyard. And
they money on that.
It's weird. There'll be a fire or explosion. It's weird.
All the turmeric in the planet is just all of a sudden evaporated. Yeah. We've nuked the poppy seed fields and the lemongrass and the ginger. Where's all the ginger? Oh no, Pfizer now owns all the ginger. So
yeah, for sure.
Crazy. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like the amount of there was a documentary 10 years ago that really kind of went nuts for a little bit. It's called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And it was about this guy in Australia. Yeah. Did you ever watch that?
I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like the whole idea was if I fall off my bike and I scrape my knee and I put the right medicine on my knee will heal. Well, why can't the inside of my body heal like that as well? And he had diabetes and heart disease, and he was on like 13 medications, massively overweight. And then he juiced for like 60 days and lost a ton of weight. The heart disease went away. The diabetes went away. All of his meds went away. And I mean, the word restaurant means restore, to restore. That's what the first restaurant was. The first restaurant ever made was just selling broth because it was meant to restore your soul and your health. So people would go in there and they would feel sick and they would drink bone broth and chicken stock and all that stuff, and they would feel better. But that's what food can do for you. Like the right foods can heal you. Unfortunately, a family-sized bag of Cool Ranch Doritos costs the same as a pint of strawberries. And one of them tastes better and is better for snacking on a couch, watching Netflix. But, it's all, the whole system is just flawed.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the Secret Service, Michelle Obama, one of her years, she did this whole initiative where she was like, they started really growing like the White House garden and pushing for kids to have like healthy lunches, which I think on paper is a great idea. Like get out, take her to the soda machines and the candy, and
I made pizza a vegetable.
Yeah, I mean, but so I'm just like, yeah, that's a whole other discussion. But like the idea, I think is always grand to be healthy, but the way a lot of people approach this stuff, it's like you're making it more harder than it should be. You're also. It doesn't make sense. Like a lot of schools in DC couldn't afford what they perceived as this healthy living because they're all this crazy food and ingredients where it's like, well, hold on a second. You could grow all these vegetables in your patio in your apartment. Just use water and sun.
Why isn't the FFA class helping supplement the kitchen and the cafeteria?
Right.
Why don't you work with local farmers and producers?
Correct.
That would give the farmer a solid job that never goes away. They would know that they're helping feed kids.
Correct.
They constantly have a paycheck. The school can get fresh, raw ingredients and cook them well. Why are we going to Tyson and getting smiley-faced potato wedges?
Yeah, it's weird. Like to your point though, it's like farmers want to help. Like my mom's side of the family, they're all dairy farmers in Western New York, and it's awesome growing up in that lifestyle. And it's just one of those things where they want to help people. It's like the government is scared. It's just weird how they want to control all that. And it's just like you look at all these homeless shelters and people like that, where I mean, you could talk about this in terms of like when restaurants, the excess food that's made and thrown away, or like how do you control that in a way where you're not wasting stuff? Like, is there a way to do that smartly, or is it
Yeah,
always one of those things where it's always bound to be excess left over?
we rarely tossed food at my restaurant. I mean, it was, it's just math mostly. You have to get the opening. When you open, you're gonna have no clue what
Yeah, for sure.
like it's a gigantic headache to think how much halibut do we need versus how much steak versus how much chicken and pork. So it takes a minute to figure out the system, but after a while, you've got an idea of how much to order, what to prep, how many covers you've got. So you can guesstimate, 30% are going to order chicken, 30% are going to order steak. But, when you have large scale restaurants, especially like the old school buffets that are no longer around, there's
Yeah.
no telling how much waste they
Oh,
have. But every time I threw something away, I was like, that's $1. And every time you throw something away, that's $1. That's $1. That's $1. And the restaurant business is a game of nickels and dimes. I mean, there's profit margins are between 2 and 7% nationally for restaurants. It's not, nobody opens a restaurant to get rich. They do it because they love it. And then if it hits, most people need multiple locations to make money. And
yeah.
you've got to have scale, because it's just like what Brent said about the music business. It's a business.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
the restaurant business, you can want to feed people, but if you're not making money and you're not analyzing every number on that P&L, you're done. You're screwed. You got to have everything. You've got to have your labor at 30% or lower. You've got to have your overhead at 30% or lower. You got to have your food cost at 30% or lower, so you can give yourself that 10% window for profit.
Right.
That's what you want. You want Monday and Tuesday to take care of your rent and your bills. You want Wednesday and Thursday to take care of your labor and your food. And you want Friday and Saturday to be your profit. You want to make money, but just being busy on the weekends won't make a successful restaurant. You got to be busy on Tuesday.
Right. It's such a so interesting. Like, would you have to like, did you treat every day the same? I mean, obviously you talk about how you have to view that, but for you physically to be in you have to be the best version of you on a Monday as you would on a Friday, right? Like, there's no like mentally, like, how do you kind of put yourself in a spot to be that good all the time?
Well, I treated every day like it was a Super Bowl.
Right.
There's no preseason, there's no training camp.
Yeah.
A lot of times with food, people give you one chance. And if it's a bad experience, A, they won't come back. They'll rarely give you a second shot. B, it's so much easier to leave a negative review than a positive review. And it's so much easier to tell all your friends about a negative experience versus a positive experience. The amount of people that are willing to go online and be like, y'all, I just had the best meal ever at so and so and so and so. That's rare. However,
Oh,
the service I had at this restaurant sucked. It took an hour to get our food, blah, blah, blah. We've seen them all over the place. So I just treated it like that. It was every day felt like live or die. Every day was, if we don't kill it tonight, that's a
yeah.
couple of people that won't come
It
back.
was it tough to start trusting people? I mean, we kind of talked about that, but how quickly and vital is it to trust your prep people, your sous chefs, your all these people who kind of help you shine?
Yep.
They're super talented, obviously themselves, but like, how hard is it to kind of get that right team in place without them feeling like you suppressing their talents? Maybe they want to be head chef. Like, it's got to be such a unique team experience, correct?
Yeah. I mean, again, I handle a lot of the prep myself, but I let them all put things on the menu
That's awesome.
if they brought, because you want them to have buy-in and you want it to feel
Yes.
collaborative effort. And it was never, I mean, I would post pictures on the Instagram page and be like, my sous chef just came up with this new menu item. It was very much like giving everyone a chance to rise to the top. You wanted them all to feel bought in. And again, I could have done a better job. I could have done it more often, but anytime they had an idea, I put everybody on we made seasonal cocktail menus for every, spring, summer, fall, winter. And I was like, look, y'all come up with the drinks. It's on you. You're the bartender. You understand this. But I never took credit for these drinks. Like, this is your menu.
Yeah,
Great.
it's awesome.
But and every cook wants to have something they created on the menu. There's a huge sense of pride with, that's mine. They're eating my pork chop. Everybody feels good about that. It's like, it's any band member writing a song or a part of the song. And when you hear the crowd singing it back, you're like, damn, I wrote that. Like, that's me connecting with people. It feels good.
How in tune was Gordon Ramsay, not only with you, but like in his umbrella of everything he represents? It seems like he's so busy, but he also looks like the type of person that's always aware of what's going on before it happens. If that makes sense. Did you feel that kind of with him?
I mean, I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. So
interesting.
There's zero connection at all. It was for a long time, it was very frustrating because there's an expectation of how things are going to play out when it's all said and done, but it's not reality. There's, they asked me to come 3 days ago. They're filming Hell's Kitchen right now in Foxwoods in Connecticut.
Yep.
They asked me to come on Saturday.
I hate that casino. Yep.
Yeah, it's not great. There's nothing around.
Nothing around there.
Nothing around. So they asked me to come this Saturday to film an episode, but they asked me to pay for my own travel. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. I can't, for a few reasons. I have a pop-up on Monday. So that'd be gone during prep day, which would be terrible.
Right.
So like, I won. Like, I'm not a ninth placer from 6 seasons ago.
Right. They have sweet neck tattoos. Right. Like, you are a winner.
You're also Fox. You're not poor. And then I found out that they made the maitre d' and the sous chefs pay for their own flights to get there too. And it's like having these massive budget cuts, and it's such a weird, it's very different from how Gordon does his other shows, because his production company has Next Level Chef at some of those other some of those other shows. So there's a little bit more freedom there for him.
With Fox, it seems very heavy-handed.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he's a producer, an executive producer, but even he doesn't have all to say.
Yeah. So to kind of, from that, you also work obviously with a lot of like sponsors and stuff. And like the hexagon, hexagon. Every time I would see that, I'd be like, come on here. Like, it's a pan. I'll cook whatever. But then Zach from Shinedown, I think you sent him some. Yep. And I was over his house and he cooked with him a day, and I could tell the difference. And it was such a weird thing because I'm so used to my mom or grandmother or aunts using the same pan for 100 years, right? Yeah. You could taste every meal in the egg.
It's all
it is interesting how that type of technology and instrument has evolved over time as well. It's like for me to taste that, and I'm not a foodie per se, I was kind of blown away.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pros with it. I mean, one, if you're in a kitchen and you have great tools to work with,
right,
you're automatically going to cook a little bit better just because of the perception of what you're surrounded by. If you walk into a kitchen and there's a bunch of warped, rusted, old aluminum pans, there's like almost a feeling of like, well, they don't even give a shit about the pans. Like,
right.
That stuff's going to flake off into the food. You don't feel good about it. You're like, I just got this old rusty pan to deal with. With Hexclad, they're not only aesthetically pleasing, I mean, they look great, but they also cook very well. And it's one of those things where you cook better if you've got great tools to cook with,
right.
It's just kind of how it works. It's like using a Traeger versus using an old Weber kettle smoker. Like, you've got a great tool that's going to give you a great result. you don't have to be finicky with it. You don't have to constantly stress about it and worry about it. It's going to give you a great end result every time.
It always seems like there's a new grill coming out there. Like every Memorial Day weekend, there's a new company. It's like, at what point is like you can't go any further with a grill? Like so, I always thought again the green egg was super stupid, but then Barry Courage cooked this tri-tip thing for me, and I'm like, holy shit! Like this thing is amazing. I I don't know, like I love cooking stuff on a charcoal grill. It's super easy for me. Like I don't have to whatever. But I also see the attraction where men in general, like, oh, I need this new Blackstone, I need this new whatever it is. It's like, at what point can you just give me a grill that works?
But at what point was it the big green egg or was it Barry? Right? Like,
Well, that's true. It's like if it's a person that's using the tool is really good, then obviously that's the selling point.
right. Yeah. Not every, I mean, you give 10 people the same recipe, you're going to get 10 different results. That's just how people,
Right.
and nobody's going to measure things perfectly. Some people can cook with feel. Some people can taste something and be like, that's off. It needs something else. You know, you can give everybody a smoker that's set to 225, but you're not going to get the same ribs. And
Right.
look at those big barbecue competitions. All those guys are world class. Someone still wins.
Right.
It's not the smoker, or I used a hickory pellet versus I used a stick burner. It's like, bro, what was in the marinade? Like, you know,
Yeah.
there's so much science behind it all. And it does, like, the tools matter, but the cook matters as much. You know, you got to have the skill to back it up. And luckily you tour around with guys that love to cook and love to smoke things, and y'all probably all eat well all the time.
Yeah, it's like they've cooked elk meat, elk back straps, I think moose, whatever. I mean, it's such a when you with people who love to cook, I feel like I'm not overeating because it's like almost like a adult candy store where you're kind of like little pieces of like elk or this chicken thigh stuff they do with these ribs or this homemade salsa. Like I love when people are happy doing what they do because it's kind of infectious, right? Like if you see
Oh yeah.
someone enjoying your food, it makes you happy. It's kind of like it's like cathartic that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, when the food they're cooking in the back parking lot is better than catering, you really got
Well, when you came out that one time last year or the year before, I mean, you're blanching brocolitis in coolers of ice water. You've got so much stuff going on. I'm just like, man, I don't even know how this is going on. There's a kitchen 100 yards from here that we should be in, and you're out here steaming on truck fumes.
I know, man. I'm like basically cooking on exhaust pipes. It's great. Sanjay's out there filming. I'm like, please don't get this. This looks so slapped together. It looks like I'm cooking in a homeless encampment. It's
It's like, were you guys cooking at a protest rally? We were. Yeah.
Yeah. In Huntsville, Alabama, it was crazy. It was like,
Yeah.
they're like, this is your setup. I'm like, all right, we'll
Yeah,
make
but
it.
I tell you what, though, man, it was awesome,
It was
super
good.
awesome.
It was good. I was
So
nervous about it.
before I let you go, like I know you've got some, like what kind of stuff you got going on? I mean, what if you're kind of hinting at your music? Can we look forward to possibly any new music, cooking, stuff like that? I know your social media is awesome. I recommend everyone to go check it out and learn something new with spatchcocking or blanching or whatever new European phrase you want to hijack and say you're doing to a pork chop. But
I think you just enjoy the word spatchcock, frankly.
I love that word. But yeah, what kind of stuff you got going on here the next couple weeks, months?
I've got a pop-up this Monday. I've got something going on tomorrow. I can't remember what, it's in my calendar. And then Wednesday I fly to LA. I'm meeting with Melon, the company that makes the hat that I always wear. We're designing a signature hat for myself, so we'll launch that.
Awesome.
I think we'll make 100 of them. It's going to say "Let him cook" on the front. Seems to be a phrase that people enjoy saying right now. And then I'm there for 3 days, come home for a day, and then I'm going to the Caribbean, St. John Island with Hexclad. I have a dinner. It's called the Taste of Lavango. So we're doing a bunch of chefs out there cooking on the beach.
I've seen that movie. Yeah.
After that, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a clear path. It's not very clear at the moment. But
Yeah.
when Atlantic City let me go and laid me off, that was weird. And it also that was part of the financially how we lived. So I'm trying to figure that out. And I've had talks with a possible job, but it kind of requires me to stop being me
Yeah,
and
that's
not represent myself anymore, which I've spent 20 some odd years trying to create this, and it feels strange to just kind of abandon it. So
yeah, for sure.
trying to work through that, figure
I
it out.
think, yeah, I think if anyone wants to like reach out to you, like whether they want to book you for something or all that, something like that, is there a certain email or can they hit you up on Instagram, Facebook? Or how do you want them to
Yeah,
do
I
that?
mean, my DMs are open on the Instagram, but they can also I get plenty of weird messages there, that's for sure. Um, they can email me at managementmgmt@alexbelew.com. That's a good way to get to my emails. And yeah, I'll try not to give out my phone number because
Yeah.
I get spam calls a day. I haven't written any songs in a while. I have another one that I'd kind of like to do. I was working on a cover of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay with
Yep.
Kyle from Matchbox 20. We've got the band recorded, but he was on tour in Australia and we haven't had time to connect to do the vocals. Sanjay sent me a song the other day that he wants me to come to his house and record.
Well, I'm glad you're getting super busy. I think that the push from the Hell's Kitchen side was a push that's necessary for you. It just wasn't, the timing might have seemed off. But I think when you're going to be able to look back a couple of years from now, I'll be like, holy shit, I'm glad they did it because now look at me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I understand that everything always works out in the wash. It's just sometimes in that, in that downtime, in that waiting season, there's so many thoughts of self-doubt and, what if it's over? Just being completely transparent about it. There's just a lot of this like, what ifs, and they can, if you have too much downtime, then those thoughts just kind of run rampant and you got to get out of your own head. And having conversations with people and like talking to you and
Yeah.
kind of helps you work all those things out mentally. You got to be able to talk about it with someone who can give you perspective or insight or things that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And, then you can mull that around and hopefully figure out a plan.
No, for sure. Well, this has been awesome, Alex. So I thank you for the time today, and we'll have to do it again soon.
My pleasure.
Oh, hello. I'm just enjoying this nice fucking candle. Anyways, I'm John, the host of Spirit Talk, and I want to talk to you about nice fucking candles. We are lucky to have Nice Fucking Candles as a sponsor of the podcast. And if you use code SPIRITTALK15, you get 15% off your first order, or use the affiliate link below to always get your candle needs through Nice Fucking Candles. Nice Fucking Candles are 100% soy wax. They have a 65-hour burn time, maybe more if you nurse the flame a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on flames or candles, but I will say these things burn a long fucking time. You ask me about the wick. It's a double wick for even burning, which is amazing. And they come in 3 incredible flavors. I'm not sure if you're going to be eating these candles, but if you do like them, the scents are eucalyptus and ginseng, tobacco and fireside, and seaside and driftwood. Once again, Nice Fucking Candles. They are the candle company for Spirit Talk. And if you love candles and need a good scent to clear out your office, your room, your podcast room, your weight room, your whatever you're doing in a room that smells like crap, use this candle. It's amazing. Thank you. Check them out. Love Nice Fucking Candles.